let her introduce our guest speaker, but it's, Consuelo is one of those superstars that Centro is happy to support along the way. She was a postdoc with us, and then, destiny took her far away from her native land and her adopted land. But we're happy that she was able to make the trip down here to be with us today. And the book is a major achievement. I don't know how much Consuelo is going to say about how we came about that collection, but I will say 2 words before passing the baton. A few years back, 4 or 5 years ago, we discovered that the Víctor Fragoso collection was there with the family, and we had an opportunity. Obviously, Consuelo's research led her to the family, and a good friend of ours, Millie, who's sort of the family intermediary, put together the acquisition, and Consuelo actually traveled often to Puerto Rico. I did a couple of trips to facilitate the transaction and the acquisition of this collection. I'm going to let her explain who Víctor Fragoso is, but it's a perfect storm. If I were to think about a model of what Centro is in terms of an incubator of talent and a support to up-and-coming scholars, I think Consuelo epitomizes that. I just want to leave it at that, and I'm so happy that we have the occasion to celebrate her book. That collection is still virgin in a couple of areas, including poetry. It's a beautiful collection of letters that Viktor wrote to her grandma, who actually was sort of a surrogate for parents with Viktor. And while he transitioned to the U.S. and while he was unknown, losing his health, he was corresponding to his grandma. It was beautiful, beautiful stuff. So it's my pleasure to introduce Maria Soledad Romero, a good friend of ours. She doesn't remember, but I visited her way back in 1971, around 6 a.m. in the morning with my good friend, his brother, Osvaldo Romero. So I know her for a long time. She doesn't remember. I said she didn't remember. But I do remember, first time I met her. She's always been into theater and expanded now to film and other arts. She's retired from Ostos Community College teaching theater, and it was a friend of Viktor as far as I can remember. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Miss College.
Okay, so I'm going to let you tell that story. But in any case, she's currently a full-time lecturer at Hispanic languages and literatures at Queen College. She's also an adjunct in her in Ostos Community College, her old alma mater or faculty, and at the present collaborates writing film reviews for En Rojo. That is a cultural supplement for Claridad, and very influential in the literature scenery in Puerto Rico. So with that, I'm going to let Soledad take over. And muchas gracias a las dos por estar aquí con nosotros.
Gracias. So, buenas tardes, good evening. Mis excusas, ¿verdad?, por el uso del inglés de Puerto Rico. So, I have the pleasure to present this afternoon Lily Santiago Silva. Oh, she wrote this, Lily. Dr. Consuelo Martinez Reyes is a Puerto Rican writer, translator, and lecturer of Spanish and Latin American Studies at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia. She previously, let me help myself. She previously taught at the Australian National University, Princeton University, and Swarthmore College, and held a postdoctoral research fellowship at the Center for Puerto Rican Studies, City University of New York. Her academic work centers on the representation of gender, sexuality, and national sentiments in Hispanic Caribbean cinema and literature. Her translation experience similarly focuses on Hispanic bilingual communities in the USA. She has translated for the PBS TV program Need to Know, the National Council of La Raza, and the American Civil Liberties Union. She has recently published her short story collection entitled En Blanco, Black Canvases, La Pereza, 2018. Entonces voy a hacerle a ella, nos acabamos de conocer, lo hicimos por teléfono y voy a hacerle la primera pregunta, ¿verdad? Víctor, aquí yo creo que everybody knew Víctor. Everybody met here? No? Muy bien. Good. So, he was my friend, and we were colleagues, and we worked on the theater together, and we also fought each other, when we were, trying to put together a play, only once, because he was such a nice person that he never, he'll talk to you, he'll kiss you, he'll embrace you, and I melt. Besides, he was very handsome, so it was difficult, to get across with him. We know that he was born in 1944. I don't know if I'm taking from your information. 1944. In Puerto Rico, and talked Spanish like she did, and I used to do, at Livingston College at Rutgers University. He was poet, playwright. His dissertation was on Pedro Mir, the Dominican poet. He was with Teatro de Orilla, the group that I, presided, who had a very short life, but he wrote a sort of monologue that I was telling her that monologue, probably the monologue was the beginning of the issue of the woman, the back lady. Mm-hmm. It was very short. We did it in New Jersey only once. Then I lost the paper. He never talked about it again. And then suddenly I found out that he was, using the subject as a play, a long play. I want to ask you, Consuelo, how and why did you become interested in the works of Víctor Fragoso? Which plays you were attracted to and why? That's the first question.
So it was completely by chance. So I quite like Edwin's description that it was the perfect storm, because I was actually here, and I think I asked Pedro Juan, no? I asked Pedro Juan, like, have you heard of this person? I think I found a little bit of reel, like old-fashioned reel that we had with some of Fragoso stuff, and I had asked to see something that nobody had dealt with before, so that I could do something very new, and I found Fragoso in this reel that nobody had seen before, and Pedro Juan starts telling me about Fragoso. Showed me even a picture that we had in the archives, but we had very just some poems. We didn't have much, mm-hmm. And I kept asking about him around, and I realized that people knew him and that I could get to his family. So Edwin let me be a risk taker, and I went to Edwin and I'm like, Edwin, I would really like to approach the family and see. I mean, I found his CV, so we did have a copy of his CV, and I saw that he had a lot of things that he had done, and we didn't have all of those things. So Edwin said, okay, go to Puerto Rico and convince the family to give us all that. And I found that a very, encouraging, trusting boss to have. No, and I went, and the family, in fact, had boxes and boxes of things. And I spent the whole day, I remember like having, my hands were black from the dust of like touching all these things. And I had like a sore throat, but I just kept reading and reading. And it was just so fascinating that I came back and I told Edwin, we have to acquire this, we have to publish it. He's so clever. And I guess amongst those, the question of which play would be my favorite one, I think La Era Latina, which was written with Dolores Prida, and we can go over. He was very handsome, in fact. We can go over the different plays. These are the plays that we included in the collection, and we included only those because those are the ones that we have in their entirety. We do have more, but some we couldn't find the end or the beginning or the middle. So these were completely there, and I'm hoping that, you know, as we keep searching, we'll piece them together. But my favorite one is La Era Latina, no, the Latino era, co-written with Cuban Dolores Prida. It's just genius. It's hilarious, and it really summarizes what was happening at the time with being Latino. Mm-hmm. The other special one, of course, is Not the Time to Stay, which is the one that names the whole collection. And I chose that one because it's has everything that I thought Fragoso was trying to do in his theater. It has very absurd, like theater of the absurd moments. It has social issues. It has a very minimalistic setting. You know, it has a lot that you encounter in all of the other plays. Mm-hmm. So even though it's not funny, because it's not a funny one, it's actually quite dense. It's very representative of his work. Mm-hmm.
Something that I want to just ask you and the friends here is that on his last stage, he was not ill. He was not ill yet. I remember visiting him in El Barrio, no? His last apartment. And he brought out a manuscript, and he told us, I finished it. He was working in some material from Ramón del Valle Inclán, The Dreams, Los Sueños. Did you ever, let me ask you, did you ever saw that manuscript? Because no one is talking about it. Because I finished and I'm ready to start, you know, thinking about a production, and then he falls ill. Did you ever have that? Is it here? Has anyone ever seen, you know, that adaptation of the work of Valle Inclán? I don't know how familiar you are with Valle Inclán, but there were, during the 30s in Spain, two great playwrights, Federico García Lorca and Ramón del Valle Inclán. Valle Inclán was an anarchist, and also I understand why Viktor, you know, also fell in love with his writings, and a dramatist. He created what is called the Esperpentos, no? A new kind of theater of monsters, ugly people, terrible people, what was a reflection of that society. He died in 1936, at the very beginning of the Spanish Civil War.
No, but Fragoso does. I mean, there's a lot of plays that, as I said, they appear on the CV, but we haven't found them, or we haven't found all of them yet, because there's a lot of stuff that we have to go through. But an interesting play, if we go, you know, on that line of, you know, dealing with society and taking back something that's there, like as he did with Julia. Newark 1974, it's a very interesting one, and actually it's like a success story for me, because we were missing only about 4 pages. And I remember I had finished everything, and I found the 4 pages writing as I was writing the introduction. So then I went back and I translated that one. And Newark 1974 represents a moment in time where in a park in New Jersey, the police interrupt a Puerto Rican festival, like una fiesta patronal that they had in Newark. And apparently this is a moment in history that has been forgotten, and there's quite a few projects in different universities that they're trying to do oral history, interview people, find newspaper clippings, just to take back that moment. and Fragoso very cleverly then represents that moment where there's, you know, people are having fun, people are just really having a good time with their families, and the police interrupts and are quite brutal, and people then fight back, but they actually start fighting back about everything that's affecting the Puerto Rican community at that time. So it's quite an interesting one.
I want to ask you about Santa Claus in Borinquen.
That's great. That's my second favorite. After the Latino era, Santa Claus in Borinquen is my favorite one. It's obviously in conversation with Santa Claus a la Cuchilla, which is Abelardo Díaz Alfaro's famous. Now we've all read it. So Santa Claus goes for the first time to Puerto Rico, and it's very interesting because it's quite a political commentary. There's a lot of political going on in that play, but it's supposed to be for children, and actually I think that's the magic of it, that children can watch that play. Actually, I envision that play as something that every school can have. Every Christmas you can run that play. It's very child friendly, but the adults are going to be enjoying a whole other level of things that are going on, because Santa's obsessed with what are people going to think about my business, because I'm not expanding, I'm not in Puerto Rico, and you know these Three Kings guys are going and I'm not. So he goes to Puerto Rico. He asks for help to the Three Kings, and the Three Kings say, no, you have to do it on your own. He's completely unprepared, and then it's hilarious because he doesn't speak the language, because he can't find the chimneys, because the police think that he's stealing, and that's why he's carrying a bag, you know. So all these like very horrible things start going happening to Santa Claus and Rudolph, knows a little bit of Spanish, so he's always trying to translate, which obviously is lost in translation, quite literally, you know. So that's something I had to deal with. But you know, Rudolph becomes also hilarious because he doesn't understand, for example, the asalto. You know, it's a parranda thing. You know, has to do with what we do in Christmas. And then they're encountered with a real asalto. They're robbed. So he's like, "Well, where's the parranda?" It's very confusing. It's a very funny one. But I think, as I said, that you know the children can enjoy it. It ends with, you know, I can easily see people giving out gifts. No, it ends with a song. There's a lot of songs in the place. But the adults can enjoy a lot of Santa Claus a la Cuchilla, no? This subtext of industrialization, of U.S. Influence in our culture. So that's quite present there.
More than that.
Yes, yes.
More than that.
Can I
Well,
ask
about those two
can I
plays.
ask a
Sí.
follow-up question to Santa Claus?
Yeah, yeah.
Can I ask? Yeah, you just published a book on children's theme, right? Now my question is, right? Is that correct? You just put something.
I published something, but it wasn't for children. But,
okay,
yeah.
okay, I mistake.
It's okay.
But do you think that play can be adapted into a children's story? And that's one question. And if you were to do that, what is the ending? Did Santa Claus and the Reyes get along, or one, you know, symbolizing culture, that Tres Reyes prevail over Santa Claus, which obviously is not historically true anymore. But I'm just curious to see.
So it's a spoiler. If I answer that, I'm gonna try not to spoil too much.
I haven't seen that.
But I do think this one can completely. I think most plays can actually be handled by teenagers, but this one definitely by kids. It's very child friendly. I think for the kids it might sound a bit awkward when Santa talks about his factory instead of his house. So, but it's something that I think kids would just dismiss and they will enjoy the play. So completely, it can be put together by sixth graders somewhere. But yeah, so the ending is very interesting because Santa, it just goes awry. Like he doesn't deliver anything, and he calls the Three Kings, and the Three Kings come to help. And they say, well, you're not gonna try this again, right? And he's like, yeah, I will try. I will come back, and I'll be more prepared next time. So that's kind of the ending. And actually, then we finish with a song and more like the three kings are more important and kind of a better option. So there is that note. But I like the hint that the U.S. influence is not going away. It's not even if it fails, it's going to come back next year. So it's quite interesting. Yeah.
It's a highly politicized or political play
Yes.
in a good sense. And it's radical in the sense that those Gibaros, they throw stones and they get rid of Santa Claus, in the short story. I want to ask you particularly about the issues of translations, because you are also a translator. So do you want to talk about that one by one or whatever
So
you
I
want
made
to
a
say?
little list of because there's a lot of issues with translation. It was a blast. It was very entertaining, but it was a challenge. So these are some of the common features of Fragoso's work. So basically, number one would be that there's bilingual characters. So some people are speaking Spanish, some people are answering in English.
Oh, I was wondering about that.
Yes. And so how do you translate all that into English? And because there's well, what I thought is that the point is that he wanted to show that there were some people who were newcomers to New York, that there were people who had been here longer and spoke English mainly, and that there were people whose English is not their first language, so they're still switching back and forth. So he wanted to portray that. So what I did is made it more evident who's young, who's old, so that you could at least make a generational distinction. If the director would want to, say, well, this person will be older, maybe will have more of an accent, of a like sounding Spanish, and the younger generation would not. But that was it took a long time to think about what to do with that. Then there's speakability, which is something that we talk about in translation. That when we translate, when we translate theater, we want the actors to be able to say things. So I try to do speakability, but I am not a director, and actually I believe directors are the ones who deal with speakability the best. So I translated it for the reader. So I knew that people are going to be reading it, and then the director is going to do whatever he or she wants to do. Then there's a lot of sayings. And the funniest one, there's a lot of sayings, a lot of them I could find equivalents in English. So that was lucky. But there's one of them that was in La Era Latina, con paciencia y saliva, you know the rest. Yeah. Literally, that's what it said. Con paciencia y saliva, you know the rest. And I was like, there's no way I can translate that. That doesn't make sense. Makes sense in English, and people won't know what, So that one definitely lost the tone because it's very funny. So I just made the character just be kind of vulgar at some other point in the play, so that you knew that character just doesn't care about being politically correct or being proper or anything like that. So there's a lot of sayings, but there were a few that were quite difficult. There's wordplay, and I tried to keep it as much as I could, but that was very difficult too and was often lost. I remember there's a character, there's a wordplay where he goes, do you know who I was talking to? No, who? Yo quien? Yo qué? Yo king? Yo king? So they start playing with king, que, quien, and I just left it in Spanish because I was like, well, quien, que are words that I think most Anglo speakers could understand. And it's part of the joke. There's the songs. There's a lot of songs. There's songs everywhere in the plays. And Peter Lowe, who's a translation scholar, has talked about the Pentathlon Principle, which is these are the 5 things that you should look at when you translate a song. You don't do it literally, but you think about singability. So can you actually sing it? Does it have rhythm, rhyme? Is it loyal to the overall message of the song? And does it sound natural? So this involved singing to myself a lot and just going around and like thinking of the song and how can it rhyme and how will it make sense. And there's actually a song that Fragoso, and this was very Fragoso for my experience of the archives. He would make a note of where a song would go, but then you'd have the song in another sheet by itself. So there was one song that I never found because it's by itself somewhere in this world. But I had all the notes of this is what's going in the song, which I also saw he would do. He would write what he was going to include in a song, and then a few pages later you'd find the song that it included the same things. So I made up a song, which was very risky, but I thought, that the play needed a song. And then what's called internal instant translation is what happens a lot in Santa Claus in Puerto Rican, which is the policeman would speak Spanish, then Rudolph would translate it to Santa into English. So that's the internal translation, and it's going on all the time. And of course, I can't do that in a play that's supposed to be all in English. So what I did is I created some distance, and Santa is on one side, and the Rudolph is in another, and the policeman is farther, and so Rudolph can't hear the policeman, and so he's just passing on the message. So that's it. That repetition became, I'm just passing on the message. And sometimes he would explain, oh yeah, well, and he would pass on the message with the word blank, that whatever word, and then Rudolph would add commentary to explain what that word meant. So those are like the untranslatable words like asalto and parranda. I left in Spanish, especially in circumstances where I thought it was very obvious because of the discussion, that's what they meant. So I thought in these cases, asalto, Rudolph actually goes on to explain what asalto means. So like, oh, well, it can both mean that somebody's robbing you, but it can mean that it's surprise. We're singing to you in the middle of the night. So I left them in Spanish. And the last one is the references to food. And he talks about Latinos. This is in the Era Latina. He talks about they talk about the characters about the Banawish, which they are contemporary versions of the Banawish. It's like a toston sandwich. So it looks awesome. I want to go and have some. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow. So they're trying to come up in the Latino era with the success, like a brilliant story of success, or what Latinos are like in the U.S. And it's very a schizophrenic play in a good sense. No, it's very comedic because they can't agree on anything because we're all different. And they have a whole passage where they talk about guineo, banana, tostones, all these plantain words that I just left in Spanish because if you read the passage, and I'll read it for you, it's pretty obvious that the passage explains what all of this is. And I did this because for me, the way I saw this, Fragoso was trying to say that we Latinos are like bananas, right? That's the essence. And we can be called something different. We can be, we can dress differently or behave differently or have different cultures, but the essence is the same. It's just the shape and the name that changes, no? So it's a great metaphor for Latinidad, and I wasn't going to translate that. So they're going to pitch this idea to Wall Street to create the Tostones Inc. company. So the young woman says, I think we should change the name of our product. You think people in Peoria will know what tostones are? Why do you think Platanutres made it in the American market? Because they renamed them banana chips, that's why. What would you call them? Banana rounds? If we put a hole in the middle, we could call them banana donuts. How about putting two tostones together with chili con carne in the middle and calling them Banawish? We should go back to the original name, plátanos. The right word is guineo. It is banana. That's the universal name. Even in Russia, they know what a banana is. Whatever name we choose, What matters is the advertising. Tostones will become a household word. You need a jingle, man. Something like "Check it out, America." Fried bananas will get you in the mood. So it's quite hilarious. This is all of his stuff is like this. No, and it actually sometimes it's quite serious. No, but this play is very very funny, and this is one of my favorite scenes. But there are some moments where it is about food. And you have to leave it just because it will be explained, but because the metaphor is bigger than the word.
Well, I don't know if we should start closing.
Yes.
And for an opening, for those, I just want to close with a commentary on his character.
Yes, you should definitely.
Some of you met him. Some of you probably were friends of him. I met him as an actor, and he was looking for an actress, and that's the way we became accomplished. And also because the people during those times, I arrived in 1968, we were all independentistas. So that means everybody was into the patriotic mood or activity, action. So that was an issue that was solved. We didn't have to talk much about that. And it happened that also our ages, nuestras edades, were almost belonging to the same generation, or several promotions, particularly those who studied at the university, those of us, first, a difference of 3-4 years. And so we came to New York with almost the same background. Here I met Rafael Rodriguez Abeyes, who was a professor and a promoter of Puerto Rican culture, a founder of Puerto Rican studies at Queens College and also at Hostos Community College. And he was my sponsor. So he was my mentor. And I met him because they were rehearsing, preparing for a show in the streets. When I came that summer with Pedro Santeliz, another well-known character, actor, director, and immediately they pushed me, into the rehearsal. I say, I have nothing, no, here it is. You have to do this poetry. So we rehearsed, and that was the beginning of a very close relationship.
It was very fruitful because we were continuously helping and feeding each other aesthetically with information and materials. For example, Rafi brought me to Queens College and then also to Hostos. And Rafi was continuously, without being intrusive, Sole, léete ese poema, mira ese cuento, mira esto, mira lo otro, ese ensayo, no olvides de darle una ojeada. En ciertos momentos, certain times at Hostos, he said, I'm not teaching that class, would you like to take it? So I will start where he left it. And we were always counting on Viktor because they were very close. Everybody was very close during those times. Something that I have to comment, besides Viktor being, his attractiveness, his physical presence, absolutely handsome. He should be, when you should be prohibited. You shouldn't be, in competition with us actresses, no? And he was always laughing. He took everything very light. And guapo, bello. Add to that, he was bright. He was intelligent, witty, culturally polished, because he knew about everything of Puerto Rican culture. So
these men, particularly those two men, who were also friends, had a background so strong, so rich, that you didn't have to look at the dictionary. You just called them, to make sure that you were doing things correctly. So for me, they were guides. At the very beginning, when I became a teacher, they used, he was playful with the use of language, never nasty. My God, this kind of personality of a man who was a good friend, never vindictive, never mean, always a good temper, not neurotic. And I'm not accusing anyone of being neurotic, but he wasn't. It happened that he was not. And filled with joie de vivre continuously, a non-toxic personality. I have to, underline that, because now and then in the group, so-and-so came, I'm not giving names, and worked, was talented, was intelligent, etc. And we worked something. At the end, there were people who will destroy absolutely everything. Friendship, the work we have done, etc. And left with a trace, leaving a trace, of bad taste. Victor will never do that. He was a person that he will get people together, and he will get from everybody, the actors, the best. The best. And even if I remember, when I had that misunderstanding, not misunderstanding, it's because we were improvising. And I found that the play that was being done on stage, I said, Victor, this is too simple. Teatro Socialista is passé, Bertolt Brecht, put it away, etc. And he said, but we have to start somewhere. In order to become Bertolt Brecht, we have to start probably, with this apparently simplistic type of theater, no? I got upset. I said, no, I don't agree. And then I left, and then I worked with him, just with a monologue. So he was so gifted and talented, that for me particularly, it was a real loss. For my life, the same as Rafael Rodriguez Avilles. One part of you went away with them because they were rich. They were rich in talent, and they gave talent away. Ellos ayudaban a todo el mundo, ellos compartían con todo el mundo, y nos enriquecieron. A mí, both of them, they made me very rich intellectually and culturally. So every time anyone asked me for Victor, I say, my God, he was my brother. And a sort of sweetheart, because he was a sweetheart of all the actresses. And if I want to extend my information, I don't know if any of you met Ilka Payan.
Yes.
Who used to be, an actress from Santo Domingo. Well, we adopted her, and she adopted us. And she was very Puerto Rican politically, She was very involved in the issues of independence, etc., because she met Juan Baribras at the place where she was staying with this family. And also Juan used to stay with that family in New York when he came. So she took immediately the torch, of nationalism and independence. When Victor fell ill, she used to tell me, I cannot figure out living without Victor, she told me. So I'm going to try and be with him during his last days. So she visited him constantly. And then after he passed, he said, well, I used to get in bed with him and hold him and not let him cry, through the passing, that moment. The moment Victor's nephew arrived, who was, a copy of Victor, taller, darker, but equally handsome, she told me, I said to myself, I'm going to marry him. If Victor passed, I have to get married to his nephew, and she did it. Okay? She conquered him. And they were married for a while because Ilka, unfortunately, after a few years, after her divorce, she became ill. And we lost her also. There were too many losses, Too many people disappear from our lives. And it's good, to talk about them in good spirits, because that's what they left us. They left us richer
more complete. Okay, thank you. Now, this is opening for commentaries spontaneous. El señor director, a ti. Sí, tú mismo.
No, quería preguntarte si en la cuestión del teatro de Back Lady se presentó en el teatro rodante.
Not that I remember. It was a very, very short monologue. And what I think is that the monologue was the beginning for the play of the Back Lady. That it was like he was attempting, reconstruct those kind of characters. At the end, who did that was Yvonne Cole.
Aha, yes, I was going
She
to
did
mention
it.
that. Yes,
She did it.
Al teatro rodante.
It was at the Rodante.
Yes, yes, con Yvonne Cole.
I don't remember that it was at the Rodante. I remember the play, but good. Thank you. Okay. Sí.
Thank you. Now that I'm in Jersey, no longer in the city, I would like to know about that newer play. What is it about?
The
So-
riots.
Yes, the riots. There were some in Branchwood Park, I think it's called. There was an annual fiesta patronal for the Puerto Rican community, and if we get specific, basically the police saw some people playing crapshoots. I think you call it in English. That's the equivalent. It's like betting on dice, something like that. And because this is illegal, they asked them to stop, but this was mounted police, so they running around with the horses, they trampled on a few people. It was pretty scary for the people there, and apparently nothing happened. And I think historically, but Fragoso doesn't present this, I think actually one person died from being trampled on, and one kid was very seriously hurt. And so they, both in real life and in the play, they go to the mayor and they protest. They said this is police brutality, what we know now as police brutality, and you have to stop this. And what they got instead was that the next year they didn't get any permits to do the fiesta patronal. So it's quite strong. And then Fragoso closes it with people. It's very shocking because they create a mountain of people, and what you think, the image that comes to your mind is that they've all been trampled on, and they create a mountain of people, and then they start getting up and saying, we demand this, we demand that, and they have a list of things that are very obviously affecting the community at the time.
To follow up real quick. I'm really interested because here, where I am, Bloomfield College, we have a theater company. We always look at these kind of things. So, and we are like 5 minutes from New York. So.
And there's a collection that has been going around. I don't know where it is now, but I mentioned the specific name of the collection and the specific scholars. There are 2 scholars that put it together, and it was at Rutgers for a time, where they do oral history and they have newspaper clippings and all of that. Which is probably what Fragoso was inspired on. So you can also visit that.
How is the language, the translation? How much Spanish is left there?
Wow, that one from memory. I do have a list of which ones are originally in Spanish and which ones are not. From memory, I think that one was mixed, but there was some jokes that were definitely in English. I remember the mayor's name is so the Puerto Ricans choose a representative to go to the mayor, but actually the Puerto Ricans feel they didn't choose that person. The mayor chose that person. That's the implication, that the mayor chooses, okay, you're Puerto Rican, you're going to go talk to them and bring back whatever their demands are. And this character is called Bot Scratcher. So Bot Scratcher, well, he's Back Scratcher, so he corrects, no, it's Back Scratcher, no, not Bot Scratcher. So there's a few jokes about that character and the fact that he's not a real representative of the people. He just wants to get somewhere in politics. So it's quite. It would be very nice. It's a good self-contained play.
Yeah, just wanted to ask Consuelo, after doing all this work, what have you learned about Fragoso's, and how is that a contribution to the literature? into the field of Puerto Rican studies more broadly. And in that context, where do you want to go next with that collection? If you want to go forward.
Yes, yes.
With this work.
I definitely want to keep moving forward. There's a lot to do. In fact, and I say this in the introduction, the point of having this collection out is that scholars actually keep the work going and get some more done. I've learned a lot about Fragoso. I've learned a lot about what was going on at the time, and I think this generation doesn't know anything. If anything, we know very little about what his generation lived and what was going on in theater. These, like Chekhov and all that, like it's very obvious that he's trying to link theater to, Puerto Rican theater, to say, to more universal theater, to Latin American theater, el Teatro Pobre de América, like all these things and those networks. I didn't know anything about that. So there's a lot of history, like the Newark, the Julia de Burgos, the reinterpretation of Santa Claus, that in terms of literary studies, there's a lot of comparisons to be made. So there's history, there's comparative literature, there's theater studies. I think there's a lot to be done. And on that note, then I think the next step would be doing something similar with the poetry, which is a lot, and it's beautiful poetry. Fragoso's training was actually in science before he did a PhD in literature. So his poetry is full of this very difficult to translate, very technical vocabulary of like sea life, for example. It's beautiful. So I think next we'll have a similar collection with poetry and with photos, because there's a lot of beautiful photos in the collection as well.
I have a question. If a theater company does want to do one of these plays, who owns the rights?
Edwin would answer that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think they would have to contact Centro and ask permission to.
And if the theater company also wants to do it as a bilingual, or like
like what it really.
Or try to mix the two languages together, then they would also have access to the Spanish version.
Well, we own all the collection.
Okay.
And obviously the only person that really knows that collection is Consuelo. Mm-hmm. But we digitize almost everything. It just needs metadata to be found and whatever. The collection itself needs a lot of curation, and we hope that linking it to, we see Fragoso as one of the greatest, perhaps most undiscovered pillars of the New York scenery for the Puerto Rican community. Post 60s, right? Post the war of poverty and all that. He passed away in his, I don't think he was about 40 years old or so.
He was 38.
38,
yeah.
very,
2 days shy of 38.
Very, very young. But nonetheless, he was very prolific. We have boxes and boxes of his work. And more importantly, his personal life, all the community that he built, especially among the gay community at the time. And his passing, he passed away from AIDS, when AIDS was not known.
No.
In fact, they thought
it was a mystery.
They thought it was cancer.
And in his letters to his grandma, he narrates the agony of seeing this slow death and all that. So I think there's a lot to be discovered. I mean, that's a book that I will support wholeheartedly, to get those letters out with the photos that correspond to that part of his life. So he not just communicate with her grandma about the coming to New York and all that, sort of adaptation, and then coming to the theater life and to letters and to activism and all that. But on top of that, as he sees that life, pass away.
Yes. And in fact, it would be beautiful if we could do a collection, kind of what he does with Julia, where you put poetry and letters and photos and something like that.
We gotta get him on the stage.
Yes, definitely. I think I think every school and university should own a copy and really get it out there and either put it on stage or study it in the classroom, because I can't think of it. I mean, you can hold a very wholesome discussion in the classroom in any of these. They're very rich.
Have you found any information about Viktor's theater activities at Livingston College? Because I was at Rutgers, and Viktor created a group of students and trained them.
Wasabara, I think it was called.
I'm sorry?
I think it was called Wasabara.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah.
And he was a delightful person. Then I ran into him again through Clemente Sotoveles. Clemente Sotoveles' wife, Amanda, suffered immensely because of Viktor's illness. She loved Viktor, Viktor loved them, and Viktor was...
People say they were like a family, no? That's what everybody I interviewed told me. He was their son.
Right, correct.
And they were his parents, at least in New York, you know, in the East Coast. Yeah.
And as you mentioned at first, you know, Amanda thought it was some sort of cancer.
Yes, because it was
this
very
whole
fast.
idea of what AIDS was not so widespread at the moment.
No. Literally, I think he was one of the first 2 patients in New York, because AIDS started in the West Coast. In the East Coast, he was it was, I think, declared posthumously. No, so he passed away, and then they realized what had happened. So with the Livingston College stuff, it was a bit sad, because we do have some stuff, but it's in very old formats. So the problem is to find a way to read them. Even like some very, like the square, tiny cassettes. Yeah. So yes, but we have to. It's in the process. We have to. I think the thing was that we have to get them clean before we can play them. So because otherwise it would deteriorate as you play them.
Yes.
So it's it's a curatorial process.
I think it's curándolo.
Yeah. But even the papers that we have, it was quite. I thought it was like a hazard to handle. I mean, I'm sure that people here know what they're doing and they handle it properly. But the first time I handled it, I thought, in retrospect, that was a bit crazy. Because yes. Yes. So now, and I didn't have to deal with the actual paper.
He was so loved by the students that after he died, they got together again and presented one of the plays in his honor.
We have a whole box with all the homenajes, like homages that were.
Was the students that he prepared for the theater.
Nice.
But he's still hidden by most accounts.
Yes. People don't know much.
We gotta do something.
And he's very talented. It's incredible. Anyone else?
Well, we need to sell some books.
Yes, let's sell books.
Books are sold, I think, for $20.
Yes.
They're actually like $24.95, but if you
Both
have
price.
cash, it's $20.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming.
Muchas gracias. En familia, pero por
Sí.